All righty, everyone. Welcome to the daily market wrap, the biggest charts in 30 minutes. My name is David Zimmerman. I'm the founder of DeFi University. Put out a lot of free content all over the interwebs. And look at this bounce. Finally, finally, Bitcoin getting a bounce here. And, it comes right on time because software has been bouncing also. So remember that correlation between Bitcoin and software right now. So when I see Oracle, Oracle is software. When I see Oracle bouncing at important support. So if we just go ahead and zoom out here a little bit, this is a daily. Notice big bounce today, big bounce at support. Now, is this a dead cat bounce? Probably, but still a nice bounce. And let's take a look also at Microsoft, big software player. Microsoft broke its respective level of support, but today, big bounce. And if we take a look also at IGV, software index here at IGV, big bounce. Now, holding that horizontal support and putting in a really big bounce. And so if we just go ahead and overlay on top of IGV, let's just overlay a chart of BTC, just so that we can see, this correlation here a little bit more clearly. Okay, so this is, over the last 2 years or so. So IGV software really since late 2024 has been a little bit more tightly positively correlated with Bitcoin. And, Bitcoin has been positively correlated with all sorts of different assets over the last a couple of years. There have been periods of time where it's been positively correlated with, USM2. There have been times, and that correlation broke down. There have been times when it's been inversely correlated with the dollar. There have been times where it's been positively correlated with the dollar. Plenty of times where it's been positively correlated with gold, maybe with a lag of some arbitrary amount. But right now, this correlation is a 0.7, a positive 0.7. So, Bitcoin and software are trading in lockstep. And so when I see something like IGV bouncing at support, and I see Microsoft bouncing, and I see Oracle, importantly, Oracle bouncing, because Oracle's just been beaten down after gapping up after reporting that deal with OpenAI and NVIDIA. So Oracle putting in a big bounce after moving from 350 all the way down to 130. That is a massive amount of capital destruction there. So big bounce today, though. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look down through the list, because I'm not convinced that any type of a durable low is in. It simply looks as if Bitcoin and all other digital assets have just simply put in a slightly higher low. Many digital assets have actually broken below their lows from that most recent downturn on February 5th, it looks like. So many altcoins have broken below their Feb 5 lows. But to see Bitcoin put in a bounce here tells me, okay, great, let's go ahead and draw in some resistance. This is, probably the first level of resistance. If I just go ahead and fix this trend line here. So we've got some resistance above, pretty clear resistance above. And we've got the support down below. So the first level of support comes in at the lows from yesterday's session. So that comes in at 62.7 or so. And we saw that level get touched basically late last night or early this morning. Now, this low here from Feb 5 at, call it 60K. I think it was just about an even 60K. Yeah, exactly. It was an even 60K. So that is the next level of support. But if the lows from yesterday break, then I wouldn't expect that 60K low to hold. And in fact, I would expect Bitcoin to move down to this better level of support. So this, I want to go ahead and zoom out. That's what I want to do here first, is zoom out to a weekly. And from the weekly, well, we've got a pretty interesting looking pattern here. It looks primed for a decent bounce. And where could resistance be? Now, notice We've got that 200-week moving average down below. If I just go ahead and delete that and delete this, we've got that 200-week moving average right down below. And there's a confluence. We've got trend line support and that 200-week moving average. So here's the 200-week all the way back. And let's go ahead and draw in that level of trend line support. I'm going to use this as my anchor point and connect to this next higher low from the start of the bull there. And I'm just going to drag this across like so. And boom, there we go. So this is the level of support that I think we should be thinking about next after this bounce plays out. So, the real level of resistance on the upside comes in at maybe 74 and a half, something like that, 74 and a half for BTC. So if Bitcoin can get up to 74 and a half, I think it would be a great sale up there to sell it, because there's no way that this bear market is over yet. Every previous Bitcoin bear market, once it has started, and Bitcoin's bear market really started in earnest back in November with the break and close below of that 50-week moving average. Notice how many times the 50-week moving average was support on the way up. Even, on the flash crash on October 10th, it was still support. But when it broke, that really signaled the start of the bear. And then after the retest and rejection, that was just a confirmation signal that, hey, we are entering the bear, we are in the bear. And this is also a pretty well-defined bear flag pattern right here. So this breakdown over the last 6 weeks has been a really, really big breakdown, but this is what you should expect in Bitcoin bear markets, is sharp moves to the downside, but also really violent, bear market rallies. And I think that's what we could be seeing here. If I zoom in here to a daily, it looks like this could be just the start of, hopefully, a big bear market rally. And if we just zoom in one more time, the first level of resistance that comes in is at 68 and a half. So basically where we were trading 2 days ago. That's the first level of resistance. Break above that, and then we can start talking about 74. So 74K on the upside will be the level at which I will open some new shorts on BTC. Let's take a look at ETH. So ETH here, this has been a roller coaster ride. ETH was 4,900 back in August of 2025, and now trading for 1,900. But if Bitcoin's bear market is not over, then there's no way that Ethereum's bear market is over. So if I just zoom in here a little bit, this is a daily. If I zoom in, ETH could easily break above its level of resistance, and quickly. It's basically at resistance now. So if we just zoom in a little bit further here, it's basically very, very close to some trend line resistance. Now, if ETH is able to break above this, then maybe we could talk about 2150. That would be the next level to look out for, somewhere around 2150. That would be the first level right there. But if ETH can really start to push higher and break out above this trendline resistance and break out above this little horizontal, and let me just throw that down so we can all see that. So right there. So we've got that trendline resistance. If that breaks to the upside, then this level 2170 would be the next level of resistance on the upside. And so far this is just a really big bull flag. So maybe it's able to get all the way up to that 50-week moving average, or this is the 50-day, 50-day moving average here. Or let's go ahead and remove that 50-day. Where's the 100? Much higher above. The 200, even further above. So maybe you could target that 50-day moving average up here. For ETH, it's something like 2,500. That could make sense as a target for ETH. But if it's able to break above its 50-day moving average, then I would look for this breakdown level to be the real resistance. And I'm dubious of whether ETH can actually get up there, because that's 2,600. So that's a big, big move on the upside. ETH is volatile. I don't know if it'll be able to do that. It would have to happen quickly. Maybe. Let's take a look at Solana. Okay, so this pattern here looks like it's just putting in another bear flag. So we would need to see a slightly higher high than this high. The flag needs to be, so this is, we got a bull flag. So we've got this bull flag within this bear flag. The bear flag will complete if Sol can get up here to 94. So this to me looks like the next level of resistance on the upside for Solana. 95, 94, something like that. That would make sense. And it would be a great place to initiate some fresh shorts on Sol if it can get up to 95. So I'm definitely got this on my watch list to add some shorts. Let's take a look a little bit down the list here. How about Tau? Just want to roll back down through my watch list. And Tau put in a great bounce. This was a great bounce. It gave back half of it, which is basically what you should expect. And since it's sitting at resistance, if it can push a little bit higher, maybe up to 190 again, that would be a clean break of resistance. We've had one, two, three. This would, if it can get up here to 190, that would be the fourth test of resistance. And we could actually see a breakout. So, Tau could be up at like 215, 210, 215-ish real quick. So this one looks like, it could put in a really decent bear market rally here. It's just been beaten down from 530 all the way down to 140. I mean, that is just a massive move, negative 73%. So this one here, Tau, if it's able to break out above 190, I think the next target would be 210. Let's take a look at Sui. So Sui, another one of the smart contract platforms here. And SUI, big breakdown level right up there at $1.30, let's call it. So that would be the level of resistance. If Sui can get back up to $1.30, oh man, you got to sell this one with your eyes closed, because there's no way if Bitcoin ends up making a move down to its 200-week moving average at some point over the next several months, then there's no way in the world that Sui is going to be able to hold these lows above like 55 cents or 80 cents. There's no way. I think Sui ends up making a move down to 30 cents. But for right now, we are in bounce mode. So I've got a target up here. I don't even think it's able to get up to $1.30. I don't think that there's enough oomph in the tank. I mean, this was a pretty big move, so maybe it can do it. Maybe it can do it. That was a pretty big move. I'm not convinced though. But the resistance comes in at $1.30. Here's XRP. Now, XRP also putting in a bounce, and let's just take a look. So XRP bouncing, and resistance comes in at the breakdown level at $1.77. We would have a first level of resistance at this 50-day moving average, which right now is at $1.70. Support comes in at the lows down here at $1.12. What?
No screen.
Man, what happened to my screen? What happened to my screen? I don't get it. This StreamYard software, because I was sharing my screen, and then and look, it just died again. I didn't do anything. It just stopped sharing the screen. Um, huh, that's so weird. Let me try to share it one more time, and then I'm just gonna sit and watch it. I might need to just go ahead and get a different streaming software. So I'm not doing anything here. My hands are up. Let's see if it stops my screen share here, because I was sharing through, I thought, throughout the entire rest of the call. Um, so I mean, you guys all saw the share going on, right? Up until just recently, when all of a sudden it died. Um, that's so strange. I don't know. All right, well, let's give it another shot. Let's take a look here at XRP. So the resistance really does come in here at $1.77. Support comes in at $1.13, but that would be a pretty decent bounce to make it all the way up to $1.77. And just like Sui, XRP also had a really, really big bounce here off of that level of support at $1.77 just a couple of months ago. That was only a couple of weeks ago, actually. Oh my goodness. So yeah, could we get back up to this level of resistance? Probably. Let's take a look at AAVE, AAVE, and I just want to double check that it's still sharing. Awesome, it is. Great. So AAVE. Now AAVE also put in a pretty decent bounce along with Tau, after this big move lower. So it is sitting at trendline resistance right now. And so a push just a little bit higher and we'd get through that trendline resistance. The real level to watch is this horizontal though, and that comes in at 140. So $140 for AAVE, that definitely makes sense to me as the next level of resistance on the upside if AAVE can break out above that trendline resistance. So here's BNB. BNB just clinging to support. So if we take a look at this level of support here for BNB, notice here's that first anchor point. Actually, I think it's right here. There's the anchor, connects to the next higher low, extends to the right, and that's where BNB found support. So it found support twice. And if it's able to put in a little bit of a bounce here, it could really bounce. This thing is super volatile. So I would think that the first level of resistance for BNB, would be this zone. Maybe not the breakdown level right here, because that is one hell of a bounce. To go from 598 all the way up to, what is this, a 32% move? Hey, you know what? It definitely could put in a big move like that. These high volatility altcoins tend to rip, especially in a bear market. You might get a really sharp bear market rally, but it all depends on Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs to be able to get up to 74. If Bitcoin can make its move all the way up to 74, that would be roughly a 20% bounce. So a 20% bounce out of BTC would likely mean that most altcoins, bounce by 40%, maybe even more than that. So here's Arrow. And Arrow's first level of resistance comes in at the 50-day moving average, which is also the breakdown level. So that would only be another 15% on the upside from here. So Arrow could definitely do that. That would be a decent bounce out of Arrow. Now, if I just drag down some trend line resistance up here, then let's see, that would be a massive bounce. I don't think that Arrow has that in the cards, because we would be talking about a bounce of like 150%. No way. We're not entering a new bull market. It's a bear market, don't you know? So maybe we do something like this. This level of trend line resistance on the upside, got our anchor right here. Next lower high, extend to the right, the 50-day moving average down below, and we've got that horizontal resistance right here. So there's a confluence right at roughly 40 cents for Arrow. So that would be some significant resistance. If it can break through that significant resistance, then the next level on the upside would be 50 cents. So 50 cents would be the level on the upside for Arrow where I would really be an aggressive seller. Now, we've seen bounces like this in the past. I mean, that was a 60% bounce in, what was that, just a couple of sessions? This was 2, 3, 4, 5. This was a week. A 60% bounce in a week. Really, really sharp rally there. So we could be about to see some really sharp rallies out of these alts. Here's Fartcoin. Now, Fartcoin broke down. It broke down below this level of support. And my expectation is that it makes a move to 0, or maybe like 7 cents or something like that. So, but in the meantime, it is in bounce mode. I'm not convinced that we're going to get a decent bounce out of Fartcoin, though. I don't think the risk appetite is really there. But if we just draw this trend line resistance, I mean, this is a steep bit of trend line resistance. So maybe not the most useful, but it looks as though it's about to break out above it. So I would think that if that does break, then maybe we can start to think about that level right at 22 cents. So, from 15 to 22 cents, that's one hell of a move. We're talking about 40% on the upside for Fartcoin. So, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, I don't know that there's enough risk appetite. So if we just go ahead and measure this recent bounce, let's just see. That was 33%. Wow. So really, really sharp bounce over just a couple of days. And here's Tron. Tron held support, unlike most other alts. And Tron held support and has held onto its gains, which is like, almost unheard of. Like, I got to move this one to the top because there are very, very few digital assets that have actually pumped and held on to it. And Tron is one of them. So I think that this is probably a good addition to any diversified portfolio here. But Tron, where do we see resistance above? Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in and let's see if we can find some resistance. So the first clear level of resistance is that 50-day moving average right there. That is a pretty clearly defined level of resistance on the upside. But where else do we have some resistance? Well, maybe this horizontal, if it can get all the way up there, that's 32 cents. So 32 cents, let me just go ahead and throw that down. So we've got support below, resistance above, and trend line resistance above also. Where there was trend line support, it broke. You can see the break of trend line support here, and then the retest. Here's the retest and the rejection. So if Tron is able to make it back up here, that would be a significant level of resistance, break above that, and it goes up here to this trend line resistance. So, maybe can it put in 12, 13% on the upside? Potentially. Maybe. If Bitcoin can move 20% on the upside, Tron can probably put in a 12% move. So, resistance comes in for Tron at 32 cents. Let's take a look. Let me go ahead and just take a look here at some stuff we never look at. So here's Plasma. Plasma is actually a pretty great chain. A ton of stablecoin liquidity, very, very cheap to interact with the Plasma chain, very, very fast. I like it quite a bit, but I don't like the token. I mean, look at this. All it's done is bleed out. I bet this looks even uglier in Bitcoin terms. So if I go XPL BTC, yeah, I mean, it's basically done a whole lot of nothing. So I wouldn't touch this one. Although, in Bitcoin terms, from that level, that was a 70% bounce, but I still couldn't buy it. Here's another coin I just couldn't buy, although it put in a perfect test of its bear market lows from last cycle. This is Cardano. And I'm going to go ahead and just say that I don't know what's being built on Cardano. I hope it succeeds. Look, I hope all of these platforms and projects succeed. But this is a great test of support. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Now that we've zoomed in, we've got that 50-day moving average above. So that is going to be a level of resistance. Let's also go ahead and grab a trend line tool, and let's just go ahead and mark off some trend line resistance above, something like that. So we've got the anchor point here. First, that is the next lower high, next lower high, next lower high. We got the 50-day moving average here at 32 cents. Break above that, and it goes to 36 cents. So that would be a pretty decent move out of ADA. That's 36%. That would be a decent move out of Cardano. So not looking bad there. Let's take a look here at how about World? We're going to need the ability at some point to determine whether someone is actually a human and if they're actually the human that they say they are. So this World chain, they've got those really dystopian, kind of scary looking orbs that you can, in certain regions of South America, have like sent to your house. So that's kind of scary, but this World, the idea behind it is necessary. Like with the advances in AI, you really need, especially on video calls or if you're talking to someone on the phone, you need to be able to prove that you are who you say you are and that you're an actual human. Because the AI is getting so good that you could have a video call with someone and it could be a bot. So you could definitely be fooled. So this technology is useful. I mean, look at that. I remember when it got up to $12. That was crazy time. $12 all the way down to 38 cents. I wonder what the tokenomics are on this. Horrible. Negative 97%. And, this is just normal for crypto to do stuff like this. Hasn't been through a full cycle yet either. If we just zoom in a little bit on this daily, let's see if there are any levels of resistance that jump out at us. So, maybe something like this, a horizontal, maybe we could throw down some trend line resistance like so, something like that. And then, a bounce up to resistance, that would be a 40% bounce. So we just need, more of a move to the upside out of Bitcoin for these to start to get some momentum going here. Let's take a look at Render, RENDER. This token was all the rage at one point during that AI boom. And, Render here, Render has really just gotten smoked. So the fat has gotten rendered out of Render. At its trough, it was down. So is this doing the same thing again? Oh my goodness! Wow. I wonder why StreamYard's not working. I wonder why it keeps failing like that. Oh well, that's a shame. So the bottom line here is that Bitcoin is bouncing and it's got plenty of room to go, probably up to 75K, 74, 75K. And so if Bitcoin can actually get up there, then all of the alts could put in a massive 20, 30, 40% pump over just the next couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. So we are in bounce mode. I want to thank all of you guys and the State of the Union is starting right now. So I want to thank all of you guys for joining live. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I blame it on StreamYard. It's their fault. I didn't do anything. And tomorrow I'll be streaming again at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll make sure that my stream works tomorrow. So thanks so much for bearing with me. And you guys have a great evening.